Why are we so interested in the supernatural? It's the unknown, possibly in a different dimension or hiding from us in our own. It can be seen before or after death, or possibly during some out-of-body experience. The supernatural is just beyond the veil, and we can't wait to pierce through. Why do we want it so badly, though? Why are we so inclined to believe in the supernatural rather than to believe in probability and evidence? It may be the same reason we like the macabre. The macabre is that which is disturbing and horrifying because of involvement with or depiction of death and injury. It is grim, grotesque, gruesome, repulsive, and sickening. Why are we so drawn to something that is repulsive? It may be a celebrity scandal, a car crash, a car chase, a fight, a murder, a gunfight. Whatever it may be, there is no one reason. We like disturbing things because we like to scream. It gives us strength, catharsis, reality, exploration, acceptance, and meaning. We often find uncertainty to be more unpleasant than unpleasant certainty. Our brain releases chemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine when we're frightened, making us more attentive and more alert. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's easy to see why. If we saw a threat coming our way like a tiger or another human pointing a gun at us, it makes sense to be alert. The chemicals released prepare us to take on the threat or escape it. The same goes for when we are simply spectators. The same chemicals are released and the experience becomes exciting. We love watching the macabre because we like to scream. We are curious, and no matter what the certainty is, we are always curious. In 2010, a film was released that has since been banned in 11 countries. For some inexplicable reason, the full film is still allowed on YouTube. It was called a Serbian film. An aging porn star agrees to participate in a quote-unquote art film in order to make a clean break from the business, only to discover that he has been drafted into making a pedophilia and necrophilia themed snuff film. The details are gory, disgusting, gruesome, and bloody. It is not for the faint of heart. There is incest, decapitation, and, as put in the movie, newborn porn. Why would anyone watch a movie like this? From the very PG description that I gave, it's very clear that watching it would be like dragging someone's mind and body through dirt, bones, blood, and a literal interpretation of hell, and then scrubbing it off in a pool of all your family's blood and rotting corpses. It ties in neatly to something called the Boomerang Effect. People will be more inclined to do things when they are told not to. When a child is told not to open a box, they start to think, what's in the box? Is it something I should know about? Is it something I want to know about? Can it benefit me? Opening the box, just like watching a gruesome movie, can demonstrate to ourselves that we are free and we can do as we please. Disturbing things can also make us feel stronger because their repulsiveness is a challenge. We sit through horror movies like Saw and The Grudge because the fictional horrors that we come up with can help us cope with our real ones. A study at Duke University showed that after watching a terrifying movie, the viewers often felt stronger. They left satisfied knowing that they didn't chicken out and made it through. On the more negative side, following a celebrity scandal or seeing the defeat on the faces of a rival team can make us feel good. It's called schadenfreude. It means harm joy, getting pleasure from others' misfortunes. Bullies, internet trolls, and especially egotistical maniacs show this feature the most. It makes sense to make someone feel less well off because in comparison, we seem more well off. It empowers us and, in our own minds, can put us on the top of the food chain. Strength, in a social sense, is the quality that allows someone to deal with problems in a determined and effective way. But how can we determine that someone is strong? Well, we must first look at the scale. On one side, we have those who are strong. the ones who don't succumb to peer pressure and the ones who can stand up to opposition. On the other side of the scale, we have those who are weak, those that cannot do anything but succumb to peer pressure, and those who break down when they encounter something they don't like. Most of us fall somewhere in between and learn to handle problems in different ways. Let's assert, for the sake of argument, that we wean out all the weak people. In a very depressing circumstance, all the weak people and all the moderately weak people will all kill themselves. Now we only have the maximally strong people left to reproduce, assuming that it will only take one generation to make a maximally strong breed of humans, one that will not bow down in the face of controversy. Is anyone truly a strong human? No. When we are left with a comparative description to define a species, the comparative description ceases to exist because a comparison can only exist comparatively. This new generation of maximally strong humans would simply be human, just as we cannot have maximally good without evil, just as we cannot have the maximally tall without short. Strength would cease to be a description of humans. This leads us to a more surreal idea of strength. We know what it means to feel strong, but how do we recognize if we are strong? Or how do we recognize if someone else is strong? More importantly, can an idea be intrinsically strong? First, how do we recognize if we, both you and the people around you, are strong? This can easily be seen by simply looking up the most recent viral videos. It's easily seen on the show 1,000 Ways to Die. It's even more easily seen in riots. What I mean by this is when people have a bad idea, they tend to do bad or outright stupid things. Statements like, "Yeah, I bet I could jump that far," are a common indicator that something unpleasant is about to happen. The person jumps and possibly breaks a bone, or even worse, they die. Natural selection has provided us with a mechanism that allows bad ideas to get slowly weaned out of the picture. If someone jumps into the Pacific Ocean saying, "I bet I can beat up that shark," we better say our goodbyes. If we look at it from this point of view, we realize that every single thing alive today is stronger as a species than its ancestors. They are the maximally strong, and if they're conscious, they have the maximally strong ideas. From this, we can conclude that people, or other conscious organisms, but I will use people for the sake of simplicity, with strong ideas are more likely to survive. Every person that is alive right now has had maximally strong ideas to help them not get themselves killed. When looking at it comparatively, the minimally strong, or the maximally weak, would at one point been considered the maximally strong. It may very well be that an idea itself could be intrinsically strong. How can an idea be intrinsically strong? The intrinsic strength of an idea can be demonstrated by social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is the idea that has claimed to have applied biological concepts of natural selection and survival of the fittest to sociology and politics. For example, the evolution from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, as well as the Industrial Age to the Information Age and beyond. The Stone Age began around 3.4 million years ago. We, Homo sapiens, lived alongside our cousins, Homo habilis and Homo erectus. Archaeological research has shown that these were nomadic societies, hunter-gatherer populations. They drew cave paintings as a precursor to art. They had whistles as a precursor to music. They had built early forms of shelter. And at this period of time, we see the first use of stones as weapons. When it comes to the evolution of technologies, African stone tool technologies are divided into modes as proposed by Graham Clark in 1969. Mode 1, Aldoan tool industries, also known as pebble tool industries. Mode 2, tools made through bifacial reduction produced from large flakes or cores. Mode 3, flake tools from prepared cores. Mode 4, punch-struck blades that are adapted into a variety of different tools. Mode 5. Microlith portions of composite tools that may include wood or bone, often abruptly retouched or backed. The stone club preceded more sophisticated implements like the stone axe, and at its most basic was simply a lump of wood that had weight at one end and a good grasp at the other. As simple as this is, it gave man a weapon that extended his striking range, even if only for a few feet, allowed him to tackle dangerous animals and mortal enemies more confidently. More importantly, it exaggerated the user's strength by using leverage to impart great force at the striking end of the club. Where would we be if Stone Age man didn't have a club to carry around with them? The Flintstones would just not have been the same. It's also important to note that the shelters they had were a precursor to modern tents. We have found tent-like structures from the time, as well as a structure with a roof supported with timber that has been dated back to 23,000 BCE. Interestingly enough, we have also found an animal hide tent dating back to around 15,000 BCE. In my personal opinion, the most important step in societal evolution was the controlled use of fire. We commonly think back to when humans first learned how to create fire. It was truly a stroke of genius. It allowed them to keep warm during the night and harsh winters. It allowed them to cook meat as to lessen the chances of disease. It must have also helped a great deal when trying to ward away a hungry predator. Signs of controlled fire have been found at various sites in Africa that are up to 1.8 million years old. Without learning how to harness and control the power of fire, it would be a very different world today. Weapons, shelter, tools, music, and a heat source, like electricity, have been shaped by human knowledge over the years. The Bronze Age gave us daggers, swords, axes, and spears made of a bronze or copper alloy. The Bronze Age also gave us pottery, cuneiform as the earliest form of writing, our first established religions, military, mathematics, a trade economy, and the first use of wheeled vehicles. Where would we be now if we didn't have writing, mathematics, or any of the other innovations of the Bronze Age? This gradual evolution of modern society through Darwinian means is the essence of social Darwinism. The intrinsically strong ideas strive and are gradually built upon. Societal morals have also been affected in this way. Please note that we are no longer hunting witches, we no longer have slaves, we no longer persecute the homosexuals. We have built upon good ideas such as equality and education while weaning out the bad ones. How do the intrinsically weak ideas get forced out of society, though? Let us finally delve into the supernatural side of this discussion. There are many kinds of rituals, including rites of passage and rites of feast, but for the sake of this discussion, I will focus on rites of affliction. Rites of affliction would be better known as shamanism or divination. Before the invention of agriculture, farmers would search for a shaman and learn how to do a rain dance. If there was an unruly child or a person stricken with mental illness, a shaman would perform an exorcism ritual. Before the invention of medicine, one would be inclined to have a shaman perform a healing spell. If a witch cursed someone, that person might seek a shaman to place a protection spell on them. The list of rites of affliction goes on and on and on. But to our benefit, modern technology and discovery have, for the most part, pushed the supernatural ideas out the windows of the academic arena. But yet, we still see many fundamentalist people going to exorcists and faith healers. It has become much less common, though, and people will also seek medical help if need be. So why do some things remain so common? Prayer, for example, is done all around the world, in churches, schools, and at home. Why do we cling to the idea of prayer, but also throw away the obviously ridiculous ideas like protection spells? It partly has to do with the way humans assess risk. Casey Cole points out that we are more responsive to threats that are dramatic, erratic, and exotic than we are to threats that are more likely. Imagine a world where cigarettes are harmless, but one cigarette pack out of every 18,750 contains a single cigarette laced with dynamite that, when lit, blows your head off. People will be loudly and messily losing their heads all over the world, but in that imaginary universe, the same amount of people will die every day because of smoking that already do. We use our brains to assess the risk of something, but our brains use more shortcuts and biases than can be put into a single, easily comprehensible video. These include the adjustment heuristic, insensitivity to prior probability, insensitivity to sample size, and many more. We also tend to exaggerate risks we don't have control over, while being fearless in the face of equal risks we nonetheless can control. A 1969 study showed that people were willing to take risks 1,000 times greater that they could control, for instance driving a car or opening a parachute, than if they didn't have control, for instance a nuclear disaster. This same phenomenon applies to us when we say music was just better back in the day. Is that really true, or are we just remembering the good stuff? We hear that prayer works because people only pay attention to successes while neglecting all the times that prayer does not work. This is called survivorship bias. People choose to maintain prayer in their daily lives because they believe that they have some control over outcomes, something that we can characterize as being strong. Let's finally ask our friends, the aliens, or visitors. Barney and Betty Hill were an American couple who were allegedly abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of New Hampshire on September 19, 1961. When a researcher asked Betty about the outer limits, she insisted she had never heard of it. The researcher also pointed out that some of the motifs in the Hills' account were present in the 1953 film Invaders from Mars. A careful analysis of Barney's description of the non-human entities that he observed reveals significant similarities between the Bifrost Man and Barney's descriptive details. One must also take into account Barney's conscious continuous recall of the entities he observed on the hovering craft. They were dressed in black, shiny uniforms, and were, quote-unquote, somehow not human. Not much is known about the Hills' personal life, but we do know that they were one of the earliest interracial couples in America. It is possible they lied about the abduction to drive away attention from them to something greater. It is also a possibility that a group like the KKK put up an elaborate prank to mess with the couple. Both of these possibilities, as extreme as they may be, are more likely than a real alien abduction. We notice that in all reports of alien abductions, the victim has always come back alive. This, just as the macabre of a movie, could give us strength to know we powered through something. The Hills must have felt empowered, in a way, to think they survived an alien abduction. It would be truly an intrinsically strong idea to think we can withstand an encounter with alien life. Another point that could make us feel maximally strong is the idea that all aliens are characterized as being little green men or somehow not human. When we look at all the accounts of extraterrestrials, they always seem to have a slight resemblance to the human form. With this in mind, it is quite easy to see that the idea of a human-like alien can make us feel like we are intrinsically strong in form. Because if other life in the universe evolved to look somehow similar to us, we must then be fit to survive on another planet, or on a light speed journey.